All right. Where are we at? Not in chapter 18. I think that as we move through this, and we talked about these, started talking in 20 about these kingdom parables. And as you start to, the parable of the vineyard is parable of the laborers. It's one of those parables in the Bible that we look at and then maybe we kind of misunderstand it a little bit. It's kind of one of those things that's kind of real life application. All of us have worked in our lives, and we generally, in our society, in our world, we generally get paid by the hour. I have got paid by the job. I have got paid contract labor in my life, or a salary. Salaries are always kind of a bad way to work because it seems like somebody always gets taken advantage of, either the worker or the employer. You know, somebody's going to lose in a salary deal generally. But this is one of those things where they worked by the day, right? Paid them for the day labor. And a denarius is a day's wage in that time, that I understand, as far as I know. A denarius was a day's wage. That's generally what you would make to work for a whole day, would be a denarius. That was one day. So in this parable, he went early, right? And he hired these laborers. They would gather up. People would gather up to work. Workers would, and they would go out there and they would hire, so many, take so many. And so he hired these guys for a denarius, and then, the third hour, which is, what time is that in the Bible? Does anybody know? Third hour, sixth hour, ninth hour. So what would the third hour be? That'd be about 9 in the morning. So about 9 o'clock in the morning, that'd be the third hour. Sixth hour is noon, ninth hour is 3 o'clock. So when Jesus on the cross, it was the ninth hour. That would have been about 3 o'clock. So third hour will be about 9 o'clock in the morning. So he saw him standing idle, right? And he didn't tell them he'd give them a denarius, right? He said, whatever is right, I will give you. So you would think, well, if they went to work at 9, they shouldn't get as much as those that went to work early in the morning. And then about the sixth hour, which was noon, and about the ninth hour, which would have been 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. He went and said, I'll give you what's right? And then at the 11th hour, he went out and found other standards. This is the end of the day, right? Ninth hour, so this is the 11th hour. It's like 5 o'clock in the evening, right? Of course, they probably worked till dark, and I don't know what time dark was in this parable, but I don't know if this was like daylight savings time or non-daylight savings time. Not sure how that works. But he went out about 5 o'clock, and he hired them guys too, very end of the day, right? These guys aren't going to work, 2 to 4 hours, right? And then when he brought them up, he began with the last group. So on top of insult to injury, he started with the ones that he hired at 5 o'clock, right? So these other guys have been out there since 9 in the morning working, and he called these other guys he'd hired at 5 o'clock in, last ones first, right? And he gave them a denarius, right? Gave them the whole day's wage. Even though they only worked for 2, 3, 4 hours, he gave them the whole day's wage, all them others, right? But then that last group came. They saw how much these other people are making, which if you're an employer, that's really a bad thing to do, right? You don't want everybody to know what everybody else makes because then somebody's going to grumble, So they hired in, and he gave them that same amount, right? They thought they would get more, but they still received the same amount. When you read this parable, it kind of makes you a little aggravated, right? I mean, because you think, if I was there all day, I'd at least got a little more. He ought at least bonused me a little bit or something, I mean, I read this parable, it kind of aggravates me because I worked my whole life, and, it just doesn't seem fair, right? I mean, it's not fair, right? It's not fair then people that only work 2 or 3 hours got the same amount of wage as somebody that was there and worked all day long. It's just not fair. Would y'all agree with that? It's just not fair, right? I mean, that's just not how the world's supposed to work. But the world's not fair, as my mother used to tell me, right? The world's not fair. So anyway, he did this, and of course, they were upset, right? They were upset. They grumbled, right? And he says, these last men have worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal. So the last guys only worked an hour. That's all they worked. And you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden in the scorching heat of the day. But he said, friend, I am doing you no wrong. For did you not agree with me for a denarius? You know, Buck thinks that's wrong. Doesn't bother him a bit. I mean, I would have been all right with my denarius because I worked, that's what I said I'd do. But I probably would have been a little upset about them other guys that got more than that because they didn't do as much. But Buck says it doesn't bother him. But on the other hand, I mean, that he did do exactly what he said he was going to do, right? He didn't do a single thing wrong. He didn't cheat anybody, didn't defraud anybody, did not pay anybody. He did exactly what he said he would do. But what's this? Why does Jesus give us this? What does this mean to me and you, right? What is this? Why does Jesus, it's the kingdom parable, right? So why does Jesus, why does he say that? Take what is yours and go. But I wish to give this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I am generous? So the last shall be first and the first last. Do you love that statement? Is your eye envious because I am generous? Kind of an interesting statement, right? Is your eye envious because I'm generous? In other words, I just was generous to them, right? I gave them some grace. I gave them a little extra, right? And you're envious of them because they got more than you got, but you agreed to this amount. You agreed to what I paid you, so I don't owe you anything else. So then Jesus says something we see in Scripture a lot, doesn't he? The last shall be first and the first last. Well, that's kind of an interesting thought, isn't it? That the first will be last and the last will be first. Jesus was a lot about equalization. The Jews weren't. The Jews thought that for you to be blessed was because you were blessed by God. You were living right. God had blessed you because you were righteous in God's eyes. In other words, if you had money or you had health or you had prosperity or you had whatever, many sons, in the Bible, it was because God had blessed you because you were righteous. Well, if that's your view of the world, then everybody that doesn't have that is not blessed by God, right? So in other words, if you don't have wealth, you don't have many sons, you don't have your health or whatever, it's because for some reason God has not decided to bless you with these things. Well, why? On a fundamental level, I'm not speaking in a Christian level, but on a fundamental level, if God doesn't bless you with things, why doesn't he do that? If God blesses you with things, why does he do that? Your righteousness is reflected. So, if you don't get anything, then why did you not get it? You said your righteousness, but be more specific. How are you not righteous? Why is that guy that got stuff more righteous than you who didn't get anything? Because of sin. But what if something happened to you that couldn't be your sin? What about the man born blind in John's gospel? What about somebody that was born crippled? Right, because it's cause and effect, right? It's cause and effect. If you're something wrong with you, see, that's a theological paradox. I'm telling you, right? This is a theological paradox because how can you have good and evil from the same God, right? How can there be, you see, it's so wrong to think that way, but yet we do, and they did especially. You and I, we don't see the world the way they saw the world. To me and you, the world is very scientific. There's reasons we're sick. There's reasons for this, reasons for that. We have reasons. They didn't have those reasons, you know. If you were sick, God caused it. If you were prosperous, God caused it. Why did God do this to you and not do this to you? The man born blind, what was the question? What was I think that's one of the most fascinating stories in the entire Bible. One reason it fascinates me is because these apostles, these disciples of Jesus who are with him every day and knew what he could do, when they saw the man born blind, had no interest in helping the man. It was irrelevant to them whether that man could ever see or not. Here was a man who could heal the blind. And what was their question? Who sinned? Right? Their question wasn't, can you heal this guy? Can you make him well? Yeah. Well, Job said it best, right? Job said, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. You know, Job understood it better than any of us, you know. Job understood that, you know, at the end of the day, it's about our relationship with God, and that, you know, everything else is just stuff, right? And, you know, and stuff, according to the Bible, blessings, according to the Bible, hinder more people from getting to heaven than the lack of blessings. Would you agree with that? Blessings, essentially, are wealth in this earth and fame in this earth and pride in this earth, hinder more people from ever going to heaven, right? It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? Yeah, Jenna, yeah, go ahead. Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah, if you're in that position to bless people with what you have, then absolutely you should use that to bless people with what you have. And I think a lot of wealthy people do that. But at the end of the day, and I'm not trying to be cynical, I really ain't. And I'm not trying to run anybody down, because I'm in the same situation. At the end of the day, very few really wealthy people in the world bless other people to the point that it really hurts them. They just give out of the excess that they possess. And stuff that, and let's face it, I'm just being honest, all right? I mean, I'm not trying to bash people. I'm glad people give. I am. I'm glad rich people give. I mean, I am. I really am. But at the end of the day, a lot of those rich people, it just really adds to their own pridefulness, the fact that they can give stuff away, and they're going to write that off their taxes, and at the end of the day on their balance sheet, they're still going to drive a nice car and live in a big house and live above everybody else at the end of their life. So, I mean, you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm just saying that rich people in the Bible did do great things. Joseph of Arimathea gave Jesus' tomb. Nicodemus brought 100 pounds of ointment to anoint the body of Jesus. They did do great things, and I'm sure that God rewarded them for that. I am. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's not an equal playing field. Yeah. Sometimes maybe. Yeah, Leela. Oh, I think that when you look at this parable and you look kind of how things are in the world, this parable is not about, we take this parable wrong, like we're all equal and we're all going to be equal in heaven, because I don't think the Bible teaches that. What this parable means is that whether you come to Jesus or the kingdom at the last hour of your life, or you come to Jesus at the first hour of your life, you're going to get that denarius. You're going to get that. You're going to get heaven. Doesn't mean you're going to get the same heaven necessarily. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be reward, because he ends it with that. The last shall be first and the first shall be last. And Amy says she doesn't understand that. To me, what that means is that God's going to equalize things. You know, those of us who have suffered, the Bible, read the story of the rich man and Lazarus. What does it say? You know, in this life, you've received your reward. You've received the good things. And this poor man has not received anything. He's been laid at the gate. He's poverty-stricken. Dogs lick his sores. He died in poverty. But when he died, he was the one laying on the bosom of Abraham, not the rich man. Now, the rich man was in torment, but I don't think the rich man was in torment because he was rich. The rich man was in torment because he saw the man laying at his gate every day and didn't share any of his abundance of wealth with this man who laid at his gate every single day. He didn't do anything to help that man. You know, it was the heart of the rich man that condemned him to hell. It wasn't the wealth. It was his heart. Yeah. Absolutely. I think there'll be distinctions in heaven, and I think there's distinctions in punishment, and a lot of people might disagree with that, but I think the Bible's pretty plain about that. He says some will be beaten with many rods and some will be beaten with few rods. So, I mean, that's the idea that the punishment fits the crime. God's always kind of been about that, hasn't he, essentially? In heaven, sure. 1 Corinthians 3, I mean, 1 Corinthians 3 says that, exactly that. It says that your works will be burned. Every man's works will be revealed with fire, and what remains, you'll receive a reward, whether it's gold, jewels, or precious stones, or wood, hay, and straw. And if there's nothing left, you'll be at heaven. You'll get your denarius, but you're going to smell like smoke, 1 Corinthians 3, right? You'll escape through the flames, but you're going to smell like smoke. Everything's going to be burned up. I don't believe in heaven, and I don't believe the Bible teaches that the person who's baptized at the last hour of their life, 11th hour of their life, is going to have the blessings in heaven or the blessings eternally that person went to work at 9 in the morning. And I don't think this parable teaches that. This parable teaches that we're all going to get heaven, and that's exactly what 1 Corinthians 3 says. We're all going to get heaven. If we're obedient to the faith, we're going to get heaven. That's a guarantee. We're going to get our denarius. That's a guarantee. Who, the rich man? No, the 11th hour guy. Yeah, he wasn't. He just went to work late. He could have been. Yeah.
Well, what if he was a really great guy and he did really great things and put his money and did all the things that a good Christian would do, but he just didn't believe and went to the last hour to believe? I mean, we assume we know everything, but really.
No, we don't. And we don't know the heart or life of any person. God knows that. But I think in 16, when it says the last shall be first, you know, I think that means that those of us that didn't receive a lot of things in this world, or people who didn't, they're going to get a reward for that. You know, God's going to equalize things. Death is a great equalizer. You know, we all leave this world. We say we leave this world with nothing, but that's not true. We leave this world with our life, with how we lived. You can't escape your life. I mean, you're not going to leave this world with anything material. I will agree with that. But you are going to leave this world with something. You know, I mean, we really mess that up when we say that. You are going to leave this world with something. That's it. And how you lived. You know, our life becomes important. Not what we not what we obtained, but our life. You know, how we lived. And I think there's an equalization for that. I know I talk about my grandmother a lot, and I wish you could have met her, because I know I kind of sainthood her a little bit, and I know she wasn't a saint, you know, but, you know, that was a woman who really served people her entire life. She never served herself, ever. You know, she just didn't do it. And it wasn't because she was duty-driven to do it. It wasn't because she felt like God made her. That's just the person that she was. I don't know how else to say it, you know. And to me, people like her are going to be first, not me. I'm not going to be first in heaven. I'm just not. I just don't deserve it. I just don't. But I've known people in my life that do. You know, I've known people in my life that need to be first. I've known some of them people. And I think they will be. And that's okay. I mean, I'm all right with that. You know, I am.
So you said something about good and evil a while ago, or somebody did, but is that like light and dark? I mean, is there, we always say God created good and evil, but is there just God's laws and the absence of that is what we consider evil? Because we only deal with humans. We don't deal with animals.
Good and evil.
Animals kill every day.
Good and evil are
Is evil the absence of
good.
good?
I guess you could make that argument. Some people do. That's been a big argument for centuries, you know. Evil is simply the absence of what's good. But I think evil stands by itself. I don't think that, I think that evil is just evil. I think there is evil in the world that I don't think you can heal it. I think it's,
The absence of godliness, though, right?
well, yeah, essentially. The absence of what's right, maybe. But I think if you just say it's simply the absence of it, then it's not active within itself. And I think evil's active within itself. I think good's active within itself. I think it's a conscious decision to do what's right or do what's wrong. And I think that you have to, you know, the problem is that we believe in only one God, right? We believe there's only one God. So everything that exists came from that one entity, that one God, everything, right? What's good, what's bad, all had to come from God. We believe that. We believe God created everything. That's our theology. We believe in one God that created everything, right? Plural theistic people, it's easy for them. There's bad gods. You know, evil's easy to explain. There's the evil gods, there's bad gods. There's bad gods, there's good gods. Bad gods cause bad things, good gods cause good things. There's this big struggle between good and evil, and sometimes one side wins, sometimes the other side wins, and it's this epic battle. You and I, we as Christians, we try to make Satan the bad God and God the good God. But the problem is, Satan's not a God. You can't make Satan a God. Satan's not a God. You know, and in our world, we think that. And it really bothers me. I think that's, in the last several months, that's probably been the thing that's bothered me more about faith than any other single thing, is that we've made Satan a God. You know, all evils, Satan's all evil. Satan influences. Satan's here. People say that. Satan's everywhere. No, he's not. He's not. Because if Satan's everywhere, then he's God. And Satan's not God. Satan can't be everywhere. Maybe his demons are everywhere. Maybe his messengers are everywhere. I don't know, but Satan's not everywhere. Because if you say that, because we say Satan's a fallen angel, I don't know that I 100% agree with that, but that's what the world says. Satan's a fallen angel. Take that out of Isaiah 7, right? But it's really not about Satan, but that's what we take. And so we say Satan's a fallen angel. Well, Satan's an angel. Angels can't be everywhere. I can prove that to you. I can scripturally prove to you that angels cannot be everywhere out of the book of Daniel. Scripturally prove to you angels are not omnipresent. Can't be everywhere. Well, when we take Satan in our world, in our Christianity, in our faith, we make Satan the bad God. God's a good God. Everything good comes from God. Satan's the bad God. Everything bad comes from Satan. And that's not true. It's not true. Satan fell, as in our theology, Satan fell from heaven. Satan fell from his heavenly estate. Satan's an angel that fell. Even the most powerful angel in the Bible, Gabriel, Michael, cannot be everywhere at once. Cannot be. Book of Daniel, he says, I'd have been here quicker, but I was dealing with the prince of Persia, and I was delayed to come speak to you, Daniel. I can't be everywhere at once. Since I was at the king of Persia's place, I cannot be with you, Daniel. When I was done with the king of Persia, guess what? I came over here. We've heard you. We've listened to you. We know you've been wanting this answer, but I was delayed. You see? Angels are not omnipresent. They can't be everywhere. We make Satan everywhere. You see, in our minds, in Christianity, we make Satan a God, and Satan's not. And think we need to understand that. Satan didn't create evil. He didn't. Satan is evil. If we believe in Satan, in the Bible, biblical Satan, we believe in that personage. Satan is evil, but he didn't create it, right? Because evil existed where? Where in the Bible do we first see evil? Garden of Eden. It was there. It was already there. God didn't create the earth and create evil. You see? God didn't do that. We believe it all existed from the beginning, very beginning of time, very beginning of the history of this earth. We believe that evil existed. Right? But even in the garden, did Satan cause evil? Did Satan cause evil? Did he make evil in the garden? Or did he simply allow Eve, influence Eve, to do what was evil? You see? We really mess it up. Just telling you, we mess it up. And we've done it to ourselves over the centuries, over the years, since I was a kid, since I was a little bitty baby. We have trained ourselves, influenced ourselves, brainwashed ourselves into making Satan this all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, big, evil God. And he's not. You know, and we need to get past it. Because Satan is not that. Evil exists within each of us. Satan doesn't have to create it in us. It is there. That's why we have a problem with it. Because it is there. Jesus talks about it all the time. Jesus talks about transforming our lives, creating within us a new heart, creating within us a new soul. Jesus continually talks about bearing the old man of sin, being dead to sin. Jesus never minces it. He tells us that we're bad people for the most part, and we're good because of him. He says he knew what was in man. Remember that verse in John? He says, I didn't reveal myself because I know what's in man. You ever read that? You ever really thought about what that means? He knows what's in man. Why didn't Jesus reveal himself to man? Because he knows what's in us. He knows us. You know, better than anybody. He created us. He knows what we're capable of. Right? Do we know that? Do we not? Do we not know what look at history. What are we capable of doing as human beings? The unspeakable. I can't even imagine. I can't even begin to put it into words. We're capable of the worst evil, worst acts, unbelievable, unspeakable. He knows us. He knows what we're capable of on the bad side. But you know what's wonderful about it? He knows what we're capable of on the good side too. And for all those evil atrocities throughout history and all those terrible things that have happened and all those things we can't even speak about and those things when we think about it, we're like, how on earth? How could that possibly have ever happened? How could anybody possibly have ever done that? And then on the flip side of that, we see people who have done tremendous good, right? And tremendous love and tremendous things that are wonderful in this world. He knows what's in us. He knows what we're capable of. But we have to know what we're capable of. Because that's the only way that we can be who God wants us to be. We have to understand that we're capable of tremendous evil. We're capable of tremendous good. We have a decision to make. Isn't that what it's all about? We have a decision to make. In this life, there's people that are dying because of Jesus Christ in this world today. I'm sure somebody in this world today will die because they're a Christian. Right? They're going to be first, you see, I think. Now, I don't think we'll ever have the opportunity to do that. And that's a good thing, I think, or I think it is, right? And I'm happy that I'm probably never going to die because I'm a Christian in this country, right? And I'm okay with them being first in heaven because they deserve it. I don't. You see what I'm saying? Some things are beyond our control, right? Some things I can't control. Sometimes if I'm going to pay a price just because of where I live or because of who I am or how I speak or the color of my skin, or I'm going to pay a price. I don't have a choice. It's going to happen to me. Going to happen to somebody. God's going to make that right. I believe that with all my heart. God's going to make that right. Because if he can't make that right, I've got a real problem with God. I just do. Because those people deserve to be first, not me. That's the way I feel about it. Anyone want to add anything? You know, give all your money, give your stuff. Be a poverty-stricken individual and give everything you have to God. You're still not going to pay the price those people pay. Right? Bible says it, right? Skin for skin. Everything a man will have will give for his life. Well, anyway, I don't know. I think we really messed some of this stuff up. I kind of believe that. I think that reward, heaven, we messed this verse up, we messed Galatians 3 up, I'm telling you. Because this is talking about the same thing. It's not talking about equality. Doesn't mean we're all equal on this earth. Doesn't mean that we're all going to have exactly the same reward in heaven or exactly the same punishment in hell. These verses simply mean that if you come to Christ in the last hour of your life and haven't done anything else for Jesus your entire life, you're still going to get heaven. That's what this means. Galatians 3 is the same thing, and that's Galatians 3, they ruined that verse, because Galatians 3 says that whether Gentile or free, right, Gentile or Jew, male or female, slave or free, right, it says we're all the descendants of Abraham, we're all equal. We're not equal, we're all going to be descendants of Abraham. We're all going to get that heaven regardless of whether you're a man, woman, Gentile or Jew, slave or free. You're all going to get heaven if you're a Christian. Doesn't mean that women are the same as men and that Jews are exactly the same as Gentiles and that slaves are the same. It doesn't equal this thing out on this earth. He's saying we're all going to get the same thing, heaven. Both these verses refer to our eternal reward, refer to heaven, not to our equality here. Because we're not going to be equal here. We're never going to be equal here. Because some people are going to pay a lot bigger price for Christianity than I'm going to pay for Christianity. That's a fact. I understand that. I'm okay with that. Right? I'm all right with that. Because I understand that in the end, God's going to make this right. Who was crying out from underneath the altar in the book of Revelation? Who was under the altar saying, how long, how long? Who was there? Who were those people? Martyrs. People who lost their life because they believed in Jesus Christ, and they're the ones under the altar. There were other people died, but they weren't under the altar crying, how long, how long? Were they? In the book of Revelation, it's those people who were martyred because of their faith in Christ. They have a special place. They have to have. Otherwise, there's something really messed up with everything we believe in. I think. Don't you think? They have to have a special place. I'm all right with that. Give it to them. I want them to have it. He doesn't need the biggest mansion in heaven. I'm not going to have it. I know that. I'm all right with that. I'm good with that. I'm fine. I don't really want a cabin on the corner like that song says, but I'll take a house in the suburbs. You know what I mean? I'm fine with that. Right? Yeah, I think you need to shoot that. It's just shooting too low, brother. It's just shooting too low. I like that guy says, I'll settle for a 10 on the wall. Well, you know, I hope you live your life in such a way that you don't have to settle. Right? I hope. Yeah. But, yeah. Right. I think that's something. If we could just get that through our heads, I think we'd be better people. I think I think it's an Elisha moment, brother. It's Elisha's servant. What a great passage of the Bible. If you get a chance to look at that, where they're in town, and it's in 2 Kings. They're in town and they're surrounded by the army, and Elisha's not worried, and the servants all, we're surrounded. This is Rex's paraphrase, but he says, we're surrounded, and Elisha comes out and he says, Lord, open his eyes that he may see, and he looks, and all on the hills are the chariots of fire, the Lord's chariots of fire that are on the hill that he can't see, to see what you can't see. We don't think that, but what a tremendous passage of Scripture where he opens the servant's eyes, and all around the hill is the chariots of fire of the Lord. The idea that it was there the whole time, but he didn't have enough faith, to believe that God was there, that God was present and going to take care of him, going to take care of what was wrong with him. And I love that. I've preached a sermon on that. I love that passage. I love that passage of Scripture, and it's exactly what you're talking about. The fact that we don't see. The Bible says that, the battle's not against flesh and blood, but against the powers and the principalities in the heavenly realms. The idea that there's a battle being waged. I think it's fascinating. But don't you think Christianity, don't you think over the centuries, and maybe the Catholics had a lot to do with that, I don't know, over the centuries, but don't you think that we've made Satan, we needed somebody to hate, he needed a name to hate, and that's how come I think Satan has become who Satan is, because we need I always think, when I think about it, I always think, we've made Satan our Osama bin Laden, we've put a face with the group that says, this is the guy you're going to hate. I think that's what we've done, and I think we've kind of personified evil, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Satan made it. The devil made me do it. Satan made me do it, Where James says plainly, he says each of us, when we is tempted, is carried off by our own lust, Not the idea that Satan tempts us or causes us, but, James is real straightforward about that, isn't he? He says when it's conceived, right, when it's conceived, it brings forth death. Each of us is tempted when we're carried away by our own lust, James never says anything about Satan. He says it's 100%, our desire, our lust, our passion, what we want, not what God puts in there. And I think that, when we like to use that as an excuse, we like to use it as an excuse for evil, an excuse for badness in the world. Our world, and I'm not going to get into this today because we're out of time, but, the one thing I know in our society today is that nobody's ever guilty, right? And I think that's what bothers me more than any other thing in the planet. I'm all right with messing up, and I mess up all the time. I'm all right with it. I'm all right with people messing up. But, I'm not all right with people not saying, I messed up. I did something wrong, I'm sorry. What I hear in my world every day, every single day of my life, especially with employees, with people around me, what I hear is that, this went wrong, and I did it, but it's not my fault. Somebody else did something. Somebody else caused it. It's because of this or that or something else. God's not going to take that as an excuse. You're not going to be able to go to heaven and say, well, I messed up, but, Satan made me do it. You shouldn't have put that, I had an affair, but, God shouldn't have put that good-looking woman in my life, Well, I stole that money, but, they shouldn't have let me handle that much cash without a little supervision, right? Well, I took that towel from the motel, but, they got plenty, and nobody's ever going to miss it, and if they didn't want me to take that towel, they should have had worse towels, so I wouldn't want to take it, I think in our world, in our society, the one thing we've forgotten how to do is take responsibility for our actions. And that bothers me probably more than any other thing. I just don't think that's going to hold up with God. On the day you stand before the judgment seat of God, he's not going to let you say, well, God, I messed up, but it really wasn't my fault. God's going to say, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it's your fault, right? You're responsible for your actions, for what you do, good or bad. You're responsible, ultimately, for what you do. We need to be better in our world, in our society, of teaching people to say, I'm sorry, I messed up. I mean, it's not that hard to say that. I mean, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Why can't we just say, I messed up? And, but, you know, I think we're really good at diverting that blame to something else or to somebody else or to a situation or to our upbringing or our society or where we live or how we're raised, or instead of just saying, guess what, I'm responsible for me. And if I mess up, I'm sorry, I mess up. I think God likes us to take responsibility. I think we can't blame Satan for evil in our lives. We just can't. We're ultimately going to pay the price. You're not going to be able to stand before God and say, well, Satan made me do it. It's not going to hold up. You know, I'm responsible for me in the end. I'm responsible for me. Whatever I do, someday God's going to hold me accountable for it. I believe that. So anyway, thanks for your time. Good class. Rambled around a lot. I like it. All right.